Durkee, and welcome to Simple Spiritual Practices. In each episode of this podcast, we'll talk about one tangible practice that will help you know yourself and God better. Most of these practices can be done in 5 minutes or less, so you can easily try it out today. If you are ready to experience real growth in your life, or if you want fresh ideas on how to approach your time with God, this podcast is for you. Way back in the 1600s, there was a monk named Brother Lawrence. Now, when I think of a monk, I picture someone who spends their days in silence and solitude. I imagine they read their Bible for hours, maybe go to a few church services every day, pray a lot, and basically just hang out with God all day. But do you know what Brother Lawrence did with his days? His job at the monastery was to wash dishes. Now, he still prayed and read his Bible and did all the other things that you'd probably picture a monk doing, but most of his days were spent doing the super mundane, routine task of washing dishes. Now, I have to wonder how he felt about that. When he decided to become a monk, I imagine he had ideas and dreams about making a difference and doing big things for God. Maybe he wanted to escape the status quo of what other people were doing with their lives, to get away from it all and devote every part of his life to God. And yet, he finds himself washing dishes. What a letdown, right? And I wonder if you can relate. I sure can. And it's not necessarily about literally washing dishes. Most of us have dishwashers these days that make that job at least a little less painful. But all of us have things that just have to get done that we're not all that excited about. So no matter what your job is or your season in life, not every moment is going to be super exciting. There are things we do that feel meaningless, yet they have to get done. And there might be days when you feel like all you do is a bunch of mundane and mindless tasks. Sometimes all of those routine things just run together. One day blurs into the next, and we start to wonder, what am I actually even doing with my life? For some of us, that might just be a fleeting thought we have every once in a while. And for others, maybe that describes how you feel most days. Now, I've definitely had seasons of both. There have been times when almost every day feels like a struggle with feeling either lost or purposeless. And there are other seasons when I do feel a sense of purpose, but then I still have those moments when one day pretty much looks like the day before. And I have to say, I feel like I can relate to Brother Lawrence. Now, I never thought I'd have a ton in common with a 17th century monk, but doing routine cleaning that never ends, yeah, I can relate to that quite a bit, actually. And like Brother Lawrence, we've all had certain ideas about how our lives would turn out and what we would spend our time doing. And yet, most days, we find ourselves washing dishes again, or replying to another email, doing another load of laundry, or attending only a slightly different version of the same meeting that happens every single week. Even if you're in a season full of purpose or doing a job you love, I guarantee there are days that feel pretty much the same as washing dishes. It's those routine tasks that feel unseen and unappreciated, or the times that you question if your work even matters. So back to Brother Lawrence and washing dishes in the monastery. So the reason that I'm talking about him today and that I think his example is so helpful for us is this. He learns what it means to turn the most mundane, basic tasks into worship and communion with God. See, he made it his goal to constantly be aware of God's presence with him. And he talks about this in the book, The Practice of the Presence of God. And he did just what that title says. He practiced awareness of God's presence so that no matter what he was doing, even while he was washing dishes, he knew that God was with him. He constantly turned his attention towards God, remembering that even washing dishes could be a time of worship and connection with God. As we consider the life of Brother Lawrence, there's a couple things that I think we can learn from him that will really help us become aware of God's presence that's with us throughout our day, no matter what we're doing. So the first one is this: even mindless and mundane tasks can be filled with purpose and meaning. Now, it's really easy to lose sight of the significance of the small things. There is a lot of talk these days about finding your passion and doing big things, chasing your dreams. And of course, that's not bad. We should dream big, and there's a time and place for that. But I do think that in all of this big dreaming, we're missing the meaning behind the everyday and mundane. We don't see that these small moments of our day, of serving our family or doing the thankless jobs, that is actually the real stuff of life. We so often look for big, but life is found in the small, and all of it matters. So what if instead of just getting those small tasks done and over with, we viewed each of these as an act of love and even of worship? 1 Corinthians 10:31 says this: "So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God." See, when we're focused on bringing glory to God with every part of our lives, not just the moments that feel spiritual, then every single thing we do has meaning and purpose. Even those small moments that feel pretty ordinary, maybe even especially in those moments, we are doing something that is filled with significance as we notice God with us and as we do those things with Him. The second thing we learn from Brother Lawrence's life is it's possible to connect with God even when you're doing things that feel like a distraction from God. So Brother Lawrence didn't just pray or worship God during church services or quiet times. He made it his mission to be aware of God's presence always, all the time, no matter what he was doing. And that's why I'm so intrigued by his life, because God invited him to do small things like washing dishes as an act of worship, as the place where he connected with God. He would simply turn his thoughts moment by moment to an awareness of God's presence with him, no matter what he was doing. Because if our only time of connecting with God is when we do have quiet and time, our relationship with Him is not going to grow, and we will not be able to receive from Him what we need to keep going in those hard moments. See, we need God not just in the quiet, but also in the busyness and struggle of our day-to-day lives. So when we live disconnected from Him, we start to feel defeated and discouraged. And if we're waiting for the perfect conditions to spend time with God, it's just never going to happen. So like Brother Lawrence, we have to learn how to spend time with God right in the middle of our chaotic days, to remind ourselves that God is with us all the time, to keep turning our thoughts and attention towards Him, to say short prayers throughout our day, prayers that don't happen with our head bowed and our eyes closed, but as we're right in the middle of a stressful moment. So learn to simply remind yourself that God is there with you. There is help for you. There's a lifeline waiting there for you when you feel desperate and unsure of what to do. And when you feel alone or insignificant as you wash one more dish, or as you wait on one more customer or attend one more meeting, know that God is right there with you, that you are not doing this alone. God wants to meet with you, even right there at the kitchen sink. This week, do what Brother Lawrence did and practice the presence of God. Make it your goal to remember God's presence with you in all of the mundane moments of your day. Now, this might sound simple, but it's actually really hard to do. I may start out my day with the intention of practicing the presence of God, and then the day is almost over, and I'll realize I haven't really given God much thought at all. That's why this is called a practice, and it's something we grow in over time. And I think we need some practical ways to do this, because it's not enough to say, okay, go on and think about God all day. We need some tools to help us learn how to do that and how to turn it into a habit that comes naturally to us throughout our day. So here's a few ideas for you. You might even want to set an alarm on your phone to go off, maybe even every hour, and label it "Practice the Presence of God." Or you could write a short prayer and put it somewhere that you'll see often. The prayer could simply be, God, thank you that you are always with me. Maybe put it next to your computer or again on your phone to remind you. The goal is simply to notice that God is with you in every moment of your day, and that even in the small and thankless jobs, you are not doing them alone. So a couple other practices that we've talked about before that can also help with this are the breath prayer, which we learned about in episode 4, and the daily review, which we talked about in episode 7. And I'll put a link in the show notes to those episodes if you want to listen to learn more about those. But basically, a breath prayer is a phrase or sentence you pray throughout the day to remain connected to God and aware of His presence. So that's a way to help you pray throughout your day and remain connected to Him. And the practice of the daily review is a way of doing just a quick scan of your day with God, noticing what He wants you to see about your day and about your life. So by reviewing your day with God, you're able to see not only that He was with you throughout your day, but He's able to kind of give you insight into those mundane moments and show you that even those matter and have significance because He was with you even then. So try using one of those practices or tools to help you learn what it means to practice the presence of God. Because He is always with us. We just need practice to grow in our awareness of His presence. Thanks for joining me today for this episode of Simple Spiritual Practices. If you want to download a free printable of this week's practice or find other resources to help you take next steps, visit lindsaysturkey.com/free. This podcast is part of the New Hope Podcast Network, and production is done by Darren Hansen. You can check out all the podcasts on the network by visiting newhopechurch.cc/listen. Make sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you don't miss an episode, and we'll be back with a new episode next week.